I'm Danielle, and I'm about to take you through a couple days of my life as we talk about designing your career. My kind of career design, life design interest started back in April 2018. I actually got this book called Designing Your Life, and it was seriously a game changer for me. I am still obsessed with that book, and I'll show you a bit about it later. But that really started my journey, discovery into, figuring out what you want to do with your life in a way that just doesn't suck, doesn't stress you out. And back when I discovered this book in 2018, it was an interesting time. I was working alongside the founder of a startup, and while I absolutely loved the work, I wasn't exactly sure that clients would keep coming in just because of the marketing efforts and what was going on, and I was just really uncertain about where my future was there, even though I loved the work. So I was very confused. And when I discovered this book, it really sent me down this road of, this creative design and figuring out what you want to do and finding these little breadcrumbs in a way that was just so exciting and so interesting and just got me pumped for my future. So I do want you to do the same, whether you're in a place where you just hate your job, it's like you can't even go another day, but you don't want to just jump into another job you don't like very much, or you're pretty content with your job, but you feel like there might be more out there for you. Wherever you are kind of on that spectrum, I'm kind of more in this place where I am in my job that I'm in now. I have no plans of leaving anytime soon. I'm learning a ton, but I also just want to think about the future because I know that when I put effort into that, when I'm figuring out what's in store for me, it just gets me so interested, and it kind of puts the work that I'm doing in the moment in context so it feels more valuable. So right now I'm the salesperson in an entrepreneurial community and co-working space, and I feel like if I dive back into this work now, which is my plan for today, it's gonna help me to make sense of where those skills are going to take me so that each day kind of feels more valuable. And that just seems so much more interesting and exciting than being what am I gonna do with my life? And asking that big question that just gets us stressed and confused. So I've got some tools in my back pocket that I know that I used when I was switching out of that role in the startup and when I was kind of taking on more of a gig style career setup, and then in transition to the full-time job that I'm in now. And all along the way, this has helped me really focus on the long term and not just jump from job to job and be miserable, but really make important decisions in a way that is thoughtful and creative. So I will share those with you today. But for now, I gotta head to work. All right, I'm home for a quick little lunch break right now, so I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about this book that I've been ranting and raving about. So a couple years ago now, I found this book that changed my life, and it's actually written by two professors at Stanford who created the concept of design thinking. And if you haven't heard of it, Google it. It's an interesting thing where essentially you go through this creation process for any type of design, whether it be, engineering or architecture or fashion design, and it helps you bring out creative solutions. And they actually applied it to designing your life. So in other cases, it was, designing clothes or designing buildings, and now it's designing your life. So they take those same structures and some new kind of concepts and put it into this awesome guide to figuring out what to really do with your life in a way that just doesn't, discourage you or confuse you or overwhelm you. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. So there's journal prompts and mind maps and actually a little bit of doodling. And that's actually for something called an Odyssey plan. This has probably been my biggest takeaway from the book. But basically, you think differently when you draw in pictures and lines and squiggles rather than just writing a bulleted list. And so if you, instead of taking that traditional, write your 3 to 5 year plan, which is hard for pretty much everybody, and you actually do it more in a visual concept, it makes it so much more revealing and so much more valuable than trying to map it out on a Word document in bullet points. I revisit that exercise probably every 6 months, and I swear by it. And fun update, I actually just found out last night that they came out with a new book that's work specific, which is really what I've been looking for. So I immediately ordered it, and it is coming this week. So I gotta go back to work in a minute, but when I get back home, I will show you the journal that I made that goes along with the exercises in the book. I'm home, I'm changed, and it's time to show you the Designing Your Life journal. I told you everything changed in April 2018 when I first got that book, and I decided, you know, every important thing in my life starts with a notebook and a page of notes. So I got this on Amazon and just started going through the exercises in here, collected lists of things I was interested in, reflections, notes from podcasts that were relevant, and started mapping out potential different paths I could take, how I could approach my career, like gig life versus full-time job, and all these different things, and started, you know, doing informational interviews in here, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a sec, but it seriously has filled up. It's almost completely filled out. It's seriously so cool to look back on. And if you're really wanting to make changes in your life, I feel like putting pen to paper is just completely different than dealing with it in your head or even like typing it out on a screen. I feel like for me, maybe I'm just more of a like pen to paper kind of gal, but it really helps you make sense of things when like you have this free-form way to capture what's in your head and to really map out what you might be interested in career-wise. And I do have a video where I talk about everything that's actually in this notebook, so definitely check that out if you're interested. But what I will say is it's just really important to have that one place where you can start to put everything so that you can begin to make connections and just pull it all together, because like I described it before, it's like breadcrumbs and you have to kind of like make sense of it. All these little pieces here, there, an interest here, a conversation there, a little research over here, and to pull that all together in one place is definitely a helpful approach. But speaking of informational interviews, I actually have one scheduled for tomorrow that I have to do a little research on, and then one that I want to reach out to set up, so I will give you a little peek into that. Okay, so what is an informational interview? When you're setting up an informational interview, it's really because you want to learn about their path and their day-to-day work life and just get a chance to peek inside what their world is really like. Maybe it's because you want to go into the industry that they work in, or you just really respect them and want to learn more about how they live their life, or maybe you're just interested in seeing if a job like that is actually of interest to you when you look at it from the inside. And I will tell you that informational interviews are probably the most important thing that you can do if you are figuring out the next steps in your career. I really mean that. So what does this actually look like? Typically, I see an informational interview as, usually for me, it's like a 20 to 30 minute phone call with somebody that I either reach out to cold, meaning like I've never met them and I don't have anybody in my network who knows them, or a warm introduction, which is when somebody that you know, either like on your team at work or a professional contact of yours, sends an introduction email saying, hey, meet this person, they're interested to learn more about what you do. And I've done both, and maybe it's because the people here in North Carolina are super nice, but pretty much everybody has said yes, which I was actually pretty surprised by, because I expected some people not to respond or some people to say they didn't have time, but I feel like people are pretty generous with their time if they value mentorship and want to make a difference and want to help people who are early on in their careers. So I have one to prep for and one to try and set up, as I said. So the person that I'm talking to tomorrow, her name is Christine, and she works for a local leadership organization. And so what I'm basically gonna do is make sure to prepare, so I have a little bit of background on her career so far, as well as the organization itself. So I'm gonna actually go down her LinkedIn page and just look at the different roles that she's had so far, as well as the company website. And the reason that I do this is, even though you're definitely, like, it feels like you're creeping on the person, it's actually really important because it's the way to make the best use of the time you have with them. You do not want to ask questions that you could Google the answers to. So I'm I'm just writing down her name, the date that I'm gonna talk to her, so if I look back on the conversation, I can remember that. I'm just gonna write down some bullet points of main things about her career that I notice, and then start to compile probably about 5 questions to ask. I think it's important to have enough questions that you feel prepared and you feel like you have things to ask if there's kind of a pause in the conversation, but not too many questions that you feel bogged down and you don't feel like you can follow a path if it comes up, and be flexible with the conversation. It's also interesting to look at the mutual connections that you have. So I have 13 mutual connections with her. So it would be cool to just kind of look at who that is and, you know, if any of those people I know really well, and that could even be a beginning to the conversation. Oh, you know, this person I saw on your LinkedIn, that's so funny, how do you know them? And it's kind of like makes that initial, you know, bond with them. So I jotted down a little bit of background based on what I saw and threw together some questions. How do you seek out your opportunities? What did you learn from this particular company that you worked for? How did you find that opportunity? What kind of skills come naturally to you versus the ones that you've learned in your work life? And those are just a few questions that I threw together in preparation. I'm definitely looking forward to talking to her tomorrow. And I actually got connected with her because someone on my team said that she seemed like she would be an interesting person for me to talk to. So that's when I asked for a warm introduction, and she sent me her calendar and I booked something in, and now I am chatting with her tomorrow. All right, so with this other guy, this is actually my mom's friend's boyfriend, and my mom mentioned that he does stuff related to strengths that's similar to a strengths assessment that I do. Whenever somebody says, I think you should talk to this person, I jump right on it and set up an informational interview because they're probably right if they know me well. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to find him on LinkedIn. Sometimes it's hard to find people on LinkedIn if you're not like secondary connections with them, so we'll see what I can do. All right, so it took a little bit of searching since he has a somewhat kind of typical name. He's a third connection, but this is the right person. Okay, I'm going onto his profile and I love this guy already. He has like a super friendly looking photo in like a forest, so it seems like a great guy by my standards. Speaker, facilitator, coach, consultant, those are all like areas that I'm pretty interested in. He's done work in strategic leadership for 25 years, which is a long time. He has an impressive list of clients that he's worked with, big companies, just a great person to talk to and to connect with. And so with him, I haven't yet set up a call. I'm not at that point where I'm already gonna come up with questions and stuff, but I am going to send him an email because I used to send these all the time, and I'm pretty sure I had like a template at one point. Here we are, and I have templates for warm introductions, cold introductions, people that I'm just communicating with over email and not setting up a call if they're too busy. So I think this template's pretty well done. I say, heard good things about your work as the subject line, which I think grabs their attention. And then I show, you know, how I was drawn to them, how I found their name, just explaining that I started doing some career exploration and wanted to get clearer about next steps. I heard you had experience in that, so I'm eager to connect. And then I actually put a couple specific questions so they know that I'm like clear on what I want to find out from them. And I say that, you know, hearing their insights would be super helpful. Can we schedule a 20-minute phone call? Just like keeping it low barrier so I'm not, you know, expecting too much from them. And what I think is good about that is you show that you've kind of done your research a little bit. You are explaining kind of the context for it, that you found their name in this way and you are interested in this area and doing career exploration, and then you ask for something simple, just a 20-minute phone call. It just really opens the door in a, like I said, low barrier way. So I'm just gonna look at his LinkedIn, learn a little bit more about his career path, come up with a couple specific questions to plug into that email template, and then send it away. Cool. So hopefully seeing into that helps you understand more about why informational interviews are one of the most important tools that you can use when you're figuring out next steps in your career. And we will wrap it up there. Thank you so much for following me along for a day as I start to dive back into career discovery and designing my work life. I cannot wait to get that new book. I will tell you all about it when I do. This is really just the beginning for me of getting back into this work. And as you can tell, as I was doing like the research for this couple of informational interviews, there's so much out there, and just diving back in and like getting a taste of what some other people have done, the amazing things that they've created or fixed or figured out, really gets me inspired to figure out what my next steps are and what I could possibly do in the next, let's say, 5 years. So thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully you learned a little something from all that. I hope that you subscribe so that you can hear more about next steps and learn alongside me as I am figuring it all out as well. And I hope that you have a great day. Thanks again for watching. Bye!